Alright, hello everyone and welcome to today's Blender live stream where I'm going to be going over this eye shader that I created a while back. I'm just going to go and make sure that the audio levels are okay. They seem to be good. I'm just going to lower it on my headphones really quick. But yes, this eye shader. So I was experimenting with color dodge, as you can see here. Quite a few layers. I'll go over the basics of this. But yeah, it's one of my most complicated shaders I've made. And yeah, I'll just wait a little while for more people to join the stream, but it's a bunch of color dodges, a lot of gradients, and more color dodges. It's basically all color dodge. But yeah, all procedural. Everything's just on this plane, or I guess square, but that's just for the edges, I guess? Yeah, it's been a little while. This was a previous version of the eye, another test version. Let me see what other objects are in here. Ah, other versions of the eye. So this one, I think was the first, profile test, which as you can see, did not go all too well. So I'll just hide that for the time being, but let's check. Okay, yeah, that's the testing for that. Unnecessary for this project. And that's everything in the scene. Okay. So, okay, we have enough people in the stream now, so let's go over this effect. So let's start at the very beginning. We start off with this little gradient. This is for the iris. And then it seems that first we color dodge the main colors into it. Okay. So the main colors, just a gradient like that. Oh, just a color, no color dodge. And then we color dodge this gradient, which is a mixture of noise and the radial gradient. So this plus this equals that, or multiply in that case. That makes it go from this to that. The next gradient is this for just a light. So again, this goes from that to that, adding one more segment. The next gradient is right here. It's just a lot of gradients doing things. So here again, just another light showing up. And then the next one, what's this? Another light. Okay. And then the next gradient. I'm just showing off all the gradients in sequence. So that gradient, it's another light. I think that's for the corner of the eye. It needed just a little bit right there. Okay. So next up, there is another color. I wonder why. Oh, I know why. Because there is another gradient? Not entirely sure what that one is for. Maybe just to get the base very low gradient set up. But this is... Oh, this mixes between... Okay, the mask for the eye. So here, we should be able to see... There we go. There is the mask for the eyelid. And the way I made that is with a lot of nodes. This is not in any way convenient, which is why in the version I released up on Gumroad, which I should recommend you check that out, the blue version, with that one I just use a mesh for the eyelids. So we have a gradient for the top, which as we multiply, the top eyelid goes up and down. We have another one for the bottom one with a slightly different profile. So those two halves, when you put them together, they turn into that, which is really, really cool. There we go. So now you can see that mask is there. I remapped it just so that's a very harsh gradient. Map ranged it. I'm getting mixed up with Unreal Engine once again. So we have that. Sorry if the blinking is just too often. I'll go and tone it down a little bit. So we just have that. So there's the mask. So this next gradient is for the eyelashes, which as you can see, those are quite the eyelashes. That's a little bit much. But when we then multiply with a few other factors, I think this one is just to, yeah, cull the two ends of it and then color dodge it. As we can see, we go from that to that, which is very cool. All this took a lot of figuring out to get right, as we can see by the gigantic node setup. Again, this is not convenient whatsoever. I do not recommend doing this. I did it out of pure boredom, I believe. But I made a better version that uses a mesh so that the shader is a lot simpler. There's a separate mesh for the eye, separate mesh for the eyelid, It's a lot simpler. It's up on Gumroad. I'm not sure if it's free or paid. I forget what I made that. But my goal, either today or tomorrow, is to convert this eye shader to be like the other one. Nice and simple. Not this gigantic monstrosity. Because I think people would be a little bit confused about that. Alright, so that's basically the entire thing. There's another color dodge. Oh, that's just for environmental lighting in this case. So we have that part right there. We have another gradient for the stars. Okay, I forgot about that. But then that just adds a little bit. So, in summary, oh, and then I turn up the brightness by a bit. Oh, I could turn that up a lot more. So, again, the very basic concept is that you have a black and white gradient like this, then you color dodge, and then it does that. It gives a very harsh, saturated fall off. It's kind of like what Bloom does because it's fairly simple. The input gradient has to be fairly low for color dodge, and then it just brings it all the way up, mostly. Like if I were to do this, it gets way too bright, so doing that's a little bit better. Again, just to review, gradients, and then that. And the good thing about color dodge is that it's very additive, I guess. Where if I were to, layer these effects, it works a lot better than what you would expect. Because here, if we look at the light that I move from here to there, it looks like actual bloom and actual light going to and fro. So that's working quite well. There and then there. Yeah, it looks so good. But yeah, that is the eye shader. So there we go. I'll just let this sit for a moment. Oh, I added a little bit of animation. I added some stars to that part. I forgot. And also, there's a little bit of stardust in the eye because that looked a bit like reflections. There we go. That's good. I will read the chat. Really quick. I just want to make sure I went over everything. So yeah, I tilted the gradient, and then I separated the gradients there, had that gradient which goes up and down for the eye, which you can, there we go, you can see that gradient, and it turns into that. Again, just do this with a mesh and a shape key. Don't do it like this. I'll show you the good version, the optimized version later. I was bored, and I was like, how far can I get with color dodge and just a plane? Yeah, so what's this one? Okay, that's the noise for the eyelashes, and then that's the stars. Okay, we can see them moving back and forth like that. Very cool. And this is in 30 frames per second already. Very cool. This project I'm very happy with because I set out with the goal of, oh, let me make an eye with color dodge in the shader, and it just worked. I'm very surprised because eyes are hard to do. This one's stylized, so I get a bit of a pass, but it's a little bit easier. Okay, let me read the chat. Whoa, hey, hi, oh, cool. Yes, it is quite cool. Will you explain how it's made? Yes. That one was from, I'm assuming, very early in this stream. How does it jelly? How does it wobble? I animated it that way. I animated every single part. There is no automation with the animation. It's just I animated it that way. I just squashed and stretched it. I need to double check. Yes, this is the squash and stretch. So if we look at this, we can see that the UV map does a little bit of a wobble. Okay. Do you read chat? Occasionally, when there are breaks. I don't want to keep interrupting my explanations with reading chat. Okay, hello Wendy. You're a modern day genius. Sometimes. I'm a part-time genius. These projects, there are many projects that don't make it to my Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, just because they fail. This one turned out really well. Not all of the stuff I make are bangers. These, they're rare. They're rare. And I'm working to make it more common, but that's the thing. Not every artwork you're gonna work on, you're gonna want to show people. But sometimes it turns out really good. Eye looks awesome, thank you. Can I put this on a sphere and use it on a face sculpt? Possibly? Possibly. Possibly. It might be difficult to putting a shader that's this complicated on a 3D model. I think that'll be difficult to get right, especially with this animated version. With the mesh version, which I will showcase soon, I think that one might be a bit better suited, but I'll have to think about it. Not the whole outline, maybe the iris. That one, yeah, that one could be exported. Like, just do maybe not quite that. Maybe just do that and then render it. Like, one thing that makes this work is a little bit of shadow on the eye. So with the kind of mix factor here, if I set it both to 1, or no, set it so that there is no eyeshadow, that looks really, really bad. Not just because it's not being clipped, but this simulates ambient occlusion, a little bit of shadow where the eye and that meets. So if you try applying it to a 3D model, it won't look that great, most likely. This is just an artistic version because it's, you know, it won't work in physical space, most likely, just because it's, you know, it's all emissive. Okay. Let's see. I've tried this once, but he's showing it doesn't work well on a mesh. Yeah, if you can turn, like, it's just because it's on a flat plane, it's just that, while making it work in 3D, it's like, oh, the eyelashes need to be protruding a little bit. The eye, this part of the eye needs to come forward a bit. How do you rig it properly to a mesh and all that? I'm thinking very far ahead in lots of technical stuff. But yes. So that's this one. Then over here, this is an old version. You can see how the difference in cleanliness between these two node setups. It's still complicated, but one is a bit cleaner than the other. Alright, so I'll switch over to the other one, the one that is currently up on my Gumroad page. Give me a quick second while I switch over to it. Starting soon. No, we are already started. Let's see. I need to find out where I put it. There we go. Thank you for the little intermission time. There we go, and we are back in the scene. So this is the other version. It's simpler, because I wanted it to be a lot more modular than the other one. Oh, and with this one, I did put it on a sphere. How about that? Very cool. But this one is multiple parts. There's the iris part, and then there's the eyelid part. The eyelid part is rigged, so it's this mesh. Or no, it's not rigged, it's shape keyed. So with this one, there's just one shape key that does that part of the animation. Is there any squash and stretch, or is it just doing its thing? Let's see, I need to remind myself how this works. Ah, okay. So there's a little bit of squash and stretch on this part of the eye. So we can see this part here, it's just doing that. Then the actual eye, okay, there's a little bit of animation in the shader. I'm assuming that's because of the ambient occlusion. Let's go and take a look at that. So here's the shader. As we can see, it's similar to the other one, but a lot better. And everything's labeled, which is very, very nice. That's why I like to do labeling the nodes whenever I make products. So again, here's that part. First color dodge, getting the kind of aqua pattern in there. Next one is adding in light 1. Next one, light 2. Again, the gradients just look like that and that. Another one there, that gradient is that one. Again, these are just spheres that get really, really honed in by the color dodge. Alright, so we have that once again. And then this last one is another light, and I can edit the lights. Yeah, let me edit the lights just to show you other parts. So here is me making it into a ring. I've used this color dodge method to make black holes and stuff like that because it's very good for, I don't know, very fancy graphics. Because color dodge, 2D artists do this fairly often to add in glowy stuff. So this last part is just the sparkle layer. You gotta get the sparkles in when you're making a kind of magical eye effect. So there's that. For the eyelid, actually, I need to check the UV maps. UV maps are fairly straightforward, just because this is octagon, just because I didn't want it leaking out the sides all too much. So with this one, the UV maps are a little bit different. They're very straightened out. So it just goes from there over. As you can see here, just goes straight. And the way I did that was I took one of the UV maps that was straightened out, selected everything else, then you follow active quads. That just straightens out everything based on if one is straightened out. So that's how I got the UV maps for that. And then here I got, again, base gradient right there. Got the general color dodge for that. Again, the gradient is just that, which is very nice. And then another one for the actual pattern, which is very cool. Here's the pattern right there, slightly animated. Forget what that's about. Oh, okay, that's edge fading again. That gradient contributes to that. Then this gradient, another sparkle layer. Okay, and then that goes into there. A little bit of sparkle, and then, as we can see, since it's a mesh, it cuts off way too harshly. So it's time for a little bit of transparency using that gradient. So we do that, and then you can customize just how much you want it to show up. If you want a more darkened eye, like that, you could. But that doesn't look quite as good, does it? Actually, a little bit more doesn't hurt. It makes it feel a lot more 3D than the other one. But it might be a little much. I don't know. I think that might be an improvement. I'll have to think about that. But yeah, that's very cool. So if I were to try to make the other version of the eye, like this one, I would have to change it to red, but I would have to change the eyelash gradients like this. I would have to do quite a bit of work. I'm not sure if I'll do it on this stream because I want this one to be very compact and just showcasing what the eye shader is. So that in the next stream, whenever I do it, when I'm actually editing the two, the old one, bringing it to be like this new optimized and clean one, the one that will not take you 10 minutes to go and sift through all the nodes. Once we do that, yeah, it'll be good. And I'll probably combine this with the current pack on Gumroad. So this one currently is out on Gumroad, and I believe Blender Market. I forget which ones are, I think this one's paid. I'm not entirely sure. I would have to go and double check. But once I get the other one made to be in this style, that one will also be up on Gumroad. But yeah, that is the current eye shaders. So if you have any questions, please ask them now. Because I think we're getting close to the end of this short stream. Just wanted to do a little bit just to showcase the eye. Okay, anything... I'm just going to check the sphere. Does this have a different material? No, it's the same material, just the UV map, again, is like that. So let's take a look at that. Move the UV map in, that happens. So in theory, yes, you could have this on a 3D model, but it might look just a tad weird without, you know, the proper eyelid stuff going on. Yeah, that's how you do it. Color dodge everywhere. I guess I could, like with these sparkles, I could make it so that they extend beyond the plane. Ooh, that's interesting. Why is that? Oh, okay. That's because of that multiply. It's $3 on Gumroad. Okay, so that one is paid. So I could have the sparkles extend far beyond. Let's set this to a multiply node. There we go, so that we can change the factor of that. I did want this to be simpler so that it wouldn't constantly be, you know, I didn't want detail everywhere. Another little side thing that I'm now noticing is with this Voronoi gradient. Since I subtract randomly from that to take out a few of the stars, this one is in a bit of a pattern. I can see a pattern, which if I separate X, Y, Z, and then swap that out, instead of having just the color be the input, have that be the input. Okay, that feels a bit more random. I'm going to just try the different versions to see which ones look more random. Okay, that one looks a lot more regular. Not a big fan of that. Let's try Z. Z seems completely random, so let's check X. X seems pretty random. But Z, I'll just keep it on Z because this is, again, on a 2D UV map. So if I do that again and take a look at the output here. Ah, okay, it doesn't subtract it as much as it did before because, again, it subtracted a color versus the other thing. So that's, a little bit strong. So I would have to lessen it by a certain extent. But it looks good. No animation on it, but that's okay. The animation of the other parts contribute to it. So I could do something like that. I don't know, many options. Let's try vector math multiply. Just a few more tests. Ooh, that looks kind of cool. For some reason, I'm expecting like a wireframe with that one. So let's try this. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Let's make it so that it's extremely extended on that part, and then doing that. 0.25, maybe 0.125. Again, pretty cool. If you do that, it gets to be a little too bloomy. That could look good. So many options with just playing around with this shader. There is a seam right here, but it's not too prevalent. I was like, do I want to spend a lot of time masking that seam? Nah, it's fine. Alright. Okay. And again, I have a little bit of subdivision on this mesh, so that it's smoother. As we can see over here, you can see a little bit of a line, but if you just bump it up, no line. But if you have it really low, you can see the lines. So I recommend keeping the subdivision there. Alright. So there we go. I think that's everything. So thank you all for watching. Again, a short stream today. I have some things to do later on. Alright. So last questions, ask them now. Or if you don't have any, that's perfectly fine. I hope I've answered all of your questions regarding this shader. Let me just make it back to the way it was and let the animation play. Nice to catch you live. I saw the right side seam too. Yep. The seam is, unfortunately, because it's UV mapped and procedural textures, the seam will exist. But since it's on this corner of the eye, it's very hideable. It's not the most pressing matter. There are ways to hide it, but it's a lot more complicated than the other way. There is the option, I should mention, of just like rendering out the eyelid part and then just pasting it on the UV map if you project it, and then editing that. Like this could just be 2D art. The eye here could just be regular 2D art plastered onto a mesh, and then you can warp it. The eye here, again, it could just be done in 2D art, just pre-rendered. It doesn't have to be procedural. Just the procedural nature of this makes it so that when like the inner eye moves, the lights don't move along with it, and so on. You get the option to animate it, and all of that. But yeah, well, maybe that could be done with layers, but that's basically what I'm doing. Just layer after layer after layer after layer of color dodges, and the gradients, of course. Did you say multiply is good for that? Sorry, I'm not entirely sure which part you were talking about. I'm assuming this part. This part is just to get the gradient I want. So with this one, we have the if I can find it. Oh wait, I just need to scale that to 1. We have this, and it's like, oh, we want this to be constrained to be inside this gradient, so you just multiply. So yes, color dodges are the main backbone of this project, just to get the very crisp gradients, and I broke this a little bit, so let me just adjust that. Color dodges all the way. When you're talking about the glowiness with of the black holes. Color dodge gives the glowiness, multiply is how you control the input gradients. So these gradients are just color ramps from inputs like the UV map and Voronoi textures. You multiply them to combine them or mask out certain areas, and then you color dodge. Color dodge all the way, and then again a little bit of alpha so that you can control what part of the eyelid is visible and which part is not. Let's see. Same thing if done with an empty. You could use an empty to control certain aspects, like where the light position is. I'll showcase that really quickly. I'll just go and put this here. Like, I wouldn't recommend it because this should be a bit more texture-based. If I get a texture coordinate node, texture coordinate, sorry, couldn't see my keyboard right there. Then get the empty as the input, and then we get the length from the object parts. We should see that we get a similar result because the gradient is similar. Again, I wouldn't recommend this. It could be nice for easily animating things because you can just animate the object instead of having to animate the values in here, but it should be fine. Couldn't I radiate shade out of the middle with an empty so it would eliminate the wrap seam? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. But if you want the seam here to be hidden, you could fade it out or fade it to another color, and that could work. Empties usually, in this one, it's not necessarily needed, but it is an option. Okay, I believe that is everything. So we're going to be under 30 minutes today, which I'm very happy about. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all had a great time. Hopefully you learned something about color dodge and the way, I don't know, glowy eyes look, I guess. The sparkles and everything. This was a very fun project to work on. Again, this is $3 on Gumroad, and I think a little more expensive on Blender Market because Blender Market has more fees. And the red version will probably be adapted to be the optimized version soon, and then that may be added to the Gumroad and Blender Market versions. I'll have to see how feasible that is, but most likely it will be possible. I'll probably live stream that tomorrow, if I can. We will see what my schedule is like that day. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. I hope you have a good one. Thank you for watching.